Hey guys, the Chickens here. We're back today with another home gym video. In today's video, guys, we're going to talk about the 3 biggest home gym mistakes that you can possibly make. So, what these are going to be is knowing yourself, knowing your budget, and knowing your layout. We're going to talk about how to figure all that stuff out. So, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you want to see more. And let's get into it. So, first off, knowing yourself. What do I mean? Now, this is something we've talked a little bit about in the past, but knowing yourself means it comes down to motivation and discipline. We got some good comments on the last video I made where I kind of briefly went over this, so I wanted to kind of talk about that. And you know, you always see these like cringy posts on social media about like motivation is nothing, it's all discipline, and you know, I agree with that for the most part. But I have found, especially in the home gym space, you know, just having this space. You know, I've spent so much money on this. It's taking up all of my basement pretty much. That motivates me in itself. And this was a comment that I saw yesterday, and I was thinking about it. I was like, yeah, I totally agree with that. Sorry, I forget your name. But yeah, it absolutely does. I mean, when you see a space dedicated in your house for a home gym, or if, you know, in your garage as you're walking in, like, you know, you see it and you want to work out. It definitely helps get over that hump a little bit of the external factor of, you know, maybe you find it difficult to work out by yourself without having a bunch of other people around, kind of thing, which definitely plays a large factor, I would say. So you have to know yourself. Are you able to, you know, get up and get it done even when it's not fun, or are you someone that likes to go to the gym with a group of people and then, you know, it's more of a social thing? So you got to be able to know yourself between and establish those kind of, you know, boundaries for yourself, see what works for you and that kind of thing. For me, I've definitely found that it was a bit of an adjustment at first. And I say if I'm going for like, I don't know, like if I'm going for a heavy squat or a heavy deadlift, and I've got the music going, like, and I'm in the zone, like, I'm just as pumped up, I think, as I would be in the gym anyways. And I've found that, you know, if you get really like too hyped in the gym, and you know, maybe there's a crowd watching or something, or going for a big lift, it kind of, I don't know, it's like, my favorite expression was from an old basketball coach that I had, and he always said to us, you know, like in high school, he's like, you know, never play too high, never play too low. So I think there is kind of that, I think that applies to a home gym kind of as well, because it's like, you know, getting overhyped for a lift and always lifting with like crazy amounts of energy and stuff, I think that has a negative effect in the long run, because you're not always going to be able to get up to that height. So being able to lift, like, you know, in a dark basement by yourself, just with your own music, you get used to it over time. You get used to it just like anything else. And I think that's a benefit in the long run. If you can get used to training like that, nothing's going to stop you, right? So number 1, knowing yourself. Number 2, knowing your budget. Now this is an obvious one, but you should have an idea of what you want to spend. Like, this should all be planned out in advance. Don't do it the way I did, where I just kind of bought like random shit and I was like, that sounds cool, like, yeah, I'm sure I have space for that. You know, I had an idea of like a floor plan and like the stuff that I needed for sure, but the rest of it, I still to this day, I just kind of piece it out. It's like, yeah, that'll fit. So don't do that. Have a set budget in place for what you're willing to spend. You know, I would say these days, to get started, you're probably looking at $3,000 minimum, you know, that's assuming that you're lifting in like a finished garage that's ready to go. You don't have to do any work to the space like I did. To like level the floor and paint and, you know, get everything cleaned up and stuff. But yeah, so having the budget in place before you start buying things is a very good idea, because the last thing you want is to buy a squat rack, buy a barbell, you know, get a bench, and then, you know, the whole time you're planning to have dumbbells, and then be like, well, it's either weight plates or dumbbells. I don't have money for both. So just do it smartly, plan it out in advance. And I think the best way to do it, I think Coop may have said this a long time ago when I used to watch his videos, before he got bought by whoever he got purchased by. I think a fun way to do it is, like, you know, if you hit a milestone or a PR, then you can get the next thing. Obviously you have the space in your budget for it, but like if you hit like a PR squat, maybe, you know, at that point you can get a safety squat bar. Or if you hit, you know, a PR deadlift, you can get a new thing, knee sleeves. That's a way that I kind of like to do it. you know, and it gives you something to like work towards. It's like, okay, you know, I really want like that's kind of what I'm thinking right now. It's like I want to get one of those Kabuki deadlift, the PR bars, but right now I deadlift like 450, 470. It's like, so I'm saying like I want to deadlift at least 500 plus before I even consider, you know, spending $500-600 on a deadlift bar, right? That only makes sense. Knowing yourself, knowing your budget, and knowing your space. I think that was the last one. Knowing your space. So it kind of goes with the budget, but just have an idea. This was a very tricky thing for me as well with the short ceiling. I was like, okay, everything is limited by the ceiling. That's what my main constraint is. I've got a ton of floor space, but I have no height space at all. So yeah, knowing your space, knowing what kind of equipment that you are going to be limited to, you know, because again, that would suck if you can't get the squat rack you want to get and you've already bought all the other stuff. That's not a fun place to be in. That and just knowing what you can get in the future, and also just knowing if you can even do your work. Like if I stand up like super straight, you know, I can hit my head on the floor joist. You couldn't see it there, but I did touch it. So yeah, it's annoying for sure. Like I can't do jumping jacks. I can't do any standing overhead, nothing. I can do it all seated, but that was something I had to figure out after the fact. It's like, okay, like how am I really gonna get a good shoulder workout in? So, you know, I do everything seated or I do laterals. If I really want to mimic an overhead press, I'll do like a seated, like leg spread kind of thing where it just totally takes the lower body out of it, which I find is probably a better thing because then it's just like all shoulders. It's kind of isolated, which is nice. But yeah, knowing your space, knowing your footprint, knowing your, you know, is it climate controlled, is it not? What are you looking at in terms of getting into that? Do you need to insulate it? You know, does your basement flood regularly, chicken? These kinds of things are helpful to know in advance, because as you guys did see, I've had this flooded once really badly, and that sucked. And you know, I had to get insurance involved with some things, and it was just a pain in the ass overall. So, you know, if you can avoid doing stuff like that, then that's great. Or if you can make it so if the stuff that is on the ground gets wet, you know, if it's just stall mats, or you can raise everything up a few inches, so if there is some, you know, wetness or dampness that comes through the floor, then that's great, you know. You can go with getting a dehumidifier, or you can go all the way to the other end and get a French drain installed inside. You know, $300 to $10,000, whatever you want to spend on it if you get a contractor to do it. Yeah, so things like that people don't necessarily think of initially. I think what most people would have to consider, the most common thing I see in like the Facebook groups and stuff, is people getting heat pumps. And I'd say a heat pump is probably the cheapest, most efficient, and the smartest way to do any sort of extra heating overall. I mean, if you can get a wood stove in there, that's great, but it's not really efficient, and again, pain in the ass to, you know, to maintain that. So most people probably do heat pumps, or if they live in areas where they don't need air conditioning, they can just get a space heater or something like that. So different ways to go about it, but important to know in advance. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Catch you next one, guys. Check it out. Right there.